Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Saki and Frenzy here, and today I'm just going to talk about how I care for my Rhaphidiphora Tetrasperma. And yeah, if you're new here, welcome to my channel. My channel is all about how to grow houseplants and how to grow succulents and cacti. And yeah, if you're the regulars, welcome back to my channel. Now, before we continue with the video, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe and click the notification bell down below because it really helps my channel to grow. And yeah, without further ado, let's just talk about how to care for this gorgeous plant right here. So let's go. I am going to refer to my little note sheet here based on what I write and what I research for my own care. So yeah, let's just start. So let's talk about this plant here, this lovely fenestrated plant right here. It is a gorgeous plant. Now this plant, let me just tell you guys about a little history of this plant as well. So this plant is actually found from, I think, in between Malaysia and Thailand. And yeah, this plant is gorgeous. So there's a few varieties of Rhaphidiphora, but this is my favorite out of all of them because it looks like a little monstera. And it looks so cute with all of the fenestrated leaves. And this will always give you fenestrated leaves because, like, for example, Monstera deliciosa, you gotta let it climb and give it sufficient light, and it will only give you some fenestrations. But this plant will give you fenestrations for days. Now, I absolutely adore this plant because my lovely and kind neighbors decided to give me a small cutting. And yeah, there's only 6 leaves or 5 leaves when I first got this plant cutting. And look how much it has grown. This here, the second node, or this leaf here, somewhere around here, is the starting point of where it grew, and it just took off. And this is what we have right now. It's just continuously growing higher and higher. And I have a cute little moss pole. Well, not really a moss pole. It's actually just a cotton and twine pole that I made myself. That way it's just to hold the plant and let it root in. And if I want to take it off, I could just untwirl the vines and stuff, and I got it out. So it's without harming the root, and I could just like get it on to somewhere else without chopping the plant up. So yeah, so that's pretty much it of this history of this plant. Let's just jump straight into watering. Alright, so let's talk about the first thing, which is, of course, watering. So this plant right here, this Rhaphidiphora Tetrasperma, is a moisture-loving plant. So what does that mean? It means the soil should not be too dry and it should not be too wet, in fact. So that way your plant will have enough moisture for it to continue to stay healthy and nice. Now, I would highly recommend watering it from the bottom, or also we call it bottom watering. So that way we fill a small tray of water, let's say like this, and just let it soak or drain it down with a shower head, just drench it down, and that way your plants will be, feeling like you're in a rainforest, and the plants will appreciate you. I will also recommend using a moisture meter if you have one. And if you don't have one, I would recommend using a wooden chopstick or a skewer. As long as it is wooden, you can see how moist of a soil you have. So the darker the wooden skewer is, the moist or the amount of water that is still in there, it's depending on the color of the stick that you put in there. So the darker the color, the wetter it is. The lighter the color and less soil sticking to it, that's the dry spot. So what you want to do is you want to be in between, so it's more into like a very oak color that has just been spritzed by a spray of water, so that way it's like a very dark wooden color, but not too dark till like there's soil just sticking all over things. So that's another way of actually seeing how moist your soil is for this plant. So yeah, that's pretty much it for watering. So let's move on to lighting. All right, so we're gonna have rain, we're gonna have a lot of thunder, so don't mind that, but let's just get back into the part, okay? So we're gonna talk about lighting. So this plant is a low light loving plant. It does not love to be in a full sun situation. So what will happen if you put your plant, especially your Rhaphidiphora Tetrasperma, into a full sun situation? Your leaves, your gorgeous fenestrated cute leaves, are going to get scorched. It will turn black and sometimes crispy cracker texture. So you do not want that to happen, especially because they are such a thin leaf plant. So I would not recommend you putting this full sun. However, I would recommend you putting it into a south-facing window or any sort of window that provides indirect sunlight for at least 6 to 8 hours a day. And that would be pretty much good enough for this plant. Now let's talk about grow lights. If you have grow lights, I would recommend you putting it on for this plant. This plant will appreciate you like crazy because like it's a Rhaphidiphora Tetrasperma. And if you give it more of a grow light situation, the stem nodes or the stem spacing would not be that far apart. As you can see, mine, I put it in a north facing window, so it's kind of stretching a little, but it's not doing badly. It's still doing great. The leaves and foliage are still fresh and green, so you really want that to be for your plants. And yeah, that's pretty much it for lighting. So let's move on to the next part, which is about humidity. All right, so let's talk about the humidity. So this plant here does not really require a high amount of humidity. I would recommend putting it at a spot which is higher, which is the better, you know, the higher the better. But this plant could tolerate as low as 40% humidity. So this plant is basically something like pothos and also Skindapsis, I think. So they are some vining plants. As you know, vining plants, they are gorgeous. Anyway, so humidity, this plant does not require that of a strong humidity environment. However, you still need to give it humidity. I would recommend using a pebble tray with water and just put your pot on top to just create a little humid bubble. That way your plant will appreciate and give you better leaves. Now, what if your humidity is below 40? I think your plants will not look as green and the tips will slowly start to crust, and it will start shriveling up from the tips, and you'll have those brown, crunchy, sometimes black little tips on your Rhaphidiphora Tetrasperma. So if you want to prevent that, I would recommend putting this plant in a higher humidity location. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So let's talk about the next thing, which is of course soil and fertilizer. All right, so let's talk about the soil and fertilizer for this lovely plant. So like all of the other aeroids that we have, for example, this philodendron here, more philodendron, a Jose Bono, a Rojo Congo, a philodendron, orange prince, and also pothos, all those with climbing abilities. They require a very well draining soil mix. So what you want to do is basically prepare yourself some leca, prepare yourself some perlite, cocoa peat, peat moss. Sometimes you could mix in some sphagnum moss. It's actually up to you, depending on how fast your soil drains. If you don't want your soil to dry out so quick, especially for Rhaphidiphora Tetrasperma, they need a more moist soil, so you could actually put some sphagnum moss on the mixture as well, just to hold a little bit more water. And yeah, mix it with cocoa peat and also peat moss, and there you go, you got a perfect soil mix for this plant. Now if you want to see and learn more about the soil mix that I provided for this Rhaphidiphora itself, I will link a video card up here or here, and also the description box down below. That way you could click on that video and learn how I created the perfect soil mix for a Rhaphidiphora Tetrasperma. So yeah, without further ado, let's talk about the propagations. Alright, so let's talk about the fertilizer as well. For this plant, I don't think it needs fertilizing that often because this plant is a super tough plant, I would tell you this. It does not really require that much of a fertilizer, but you could still fertilize it if you start seeing the plant looking a little bit off. For example, the yellowing of leaves, which is not enough potassium or something in the leaves, and it's just turning into this pale yellow. That could also be because you overwatered, so there's two factors for that. Yeah, so fertilizer, I hardly ever fertilize this plant. I only put a little bit of Osmocote because it works for me, I guess. It helps the plants boost itself a little bit, that way they grow healthier and green leaves, and that way their tips won't turn brown and crispy as well, so they look stronger and stable. So yeah, I only use Osmocote, just a small little teaspoon should be enough for this plant to survive and thrive. So let's talk about the last thing, which is of course the propagations and also the pots that we should use. Alright, so let's talk about the propagations for Rhaphidiphora Tetrasperma. So, as you may know, all aroids has a node, or every single plant, pretty sure, there is a node. So what is a node? A node is a spot where the petiole and the roots are growing, and that is a node on the plant. So what you want to do is pretty much cut it below the node to actually get yourself a cutting. So I'm gonna do a little demonstration on this nice Rhaphidiphora Tetrasperma. Now, I know a lot of you, and including me, we do not want to cut our plants because like they're so pretty, but in the same time we want to have more plants, so it's the only way to do it, so don't be afraid. So what I have here is basically a small little blade. Now don't judge me, I know I'm gonna get a lot of hate for this, but this is just a box cutter blade that I sterilized the tip of the blade with alcohol, so that way I don't introduce any virus and bacteria into the stem. That way it'll be safe from dying and also getting infected with disease. So I am just going to slice this plant, just a single node, just to show you guys what I mean by cutting it in between the nodes. Alright, so how do we cut this? So just to keep in mind, Rhaphidiphora Tetraspermas and like other philodendrons and pothos, they have this like tiny fine needles in its sap, so you better be careful when dealing with it, and you try not to get it on your skin because you're gonna get a lot of irritations. So yeah, I'm just gonna do that cut real quick. So this is the blade that I'm using, and then this here is a node. As you can see, I'm not sure you could see it clearly. So basically here is where the new leaf is forming. So this is the new leaf right here, the small one. And then the roots are basically there, that nub. This stubby little nub here is the roots that it's going to be there. So this part here is considered as a node. So I got it in my little notes as well. You could see it much clearer on what I'm trying to explain here. So basically here it is where you're supposed to cut if you were to cut, and this is the roots, here is the petiole of the leaf, and etc. So I hope that is clear. I have to put it on a little sheet, so it's, like I said, it's easier for me to remember, and I could always refer it whenever I want to. And yeah, let's just do the cut real quick. So this is the blade, this is the plant. You want to cut at least an inch of a stem, including the node. So I'm just gonna go and slice it in there. Oopsie. Okay, there we go. So here it is. This is the Rhaphidiphora Tetrasperma cutting. So like I said, this is the roots. Hold on, let me focus it for you guys. Okay, so there has a roots. There's the roots, and there is also the stem of the plant, or the petiole, that is kind of connected to the roots here. I'm not sure if you show. There we go. So here's the leaf, and then here is the petiole that is connected. So that is considered a node. Now what you want to do now is pretty much let this to callus over. So what is callusing is basically the nodes are cured and it becomes like a very hard surface. It will feel like a cork that you have on a wine bottle. So yeah, you want to let this dry out, and also let this dry out. If you want to dry it out quicker, you could also put rooting hormones, or either you could put cinnamon powder. That way your plant would callus quicker and you could grow this in a soil instantly. So I'm just gonna set this cutting aside, probably here, and let it dry out. And yeah, so here is the cut spot, as you can see on this stem right there. That's the cut spot. So what we want to do is just let it dry out. So alright, so how do you propagate your cuttings after you let it callus over and when it dries out totally, which is not really dried out yet because it does not dry that quick. So you gotta be patient, but patience will lead you to something that is way better and nicer. So what you want to do is basically, you could grow this either way. I would recommend growing this in water if you want it to be more successful, or it's actually just based on which way is more successful and easier for you to actually grow. So I prefer to grow this in water. Same goes with pothos and also philodendrons. So I like to grow it in water, and it has a lot of success. So if you grow this in the water, your root node has grown, let's say, an inch or two. Try not to grow it too much to the point where when you transfer it to soil, it does shock the plant, and your plant will just stay there for a few days or months to be just 2 leaves, and it's not actually doing much. It's still getting used to the new environment that it has. So yeah, and if you're growing it straight in soil, you could just watch it grow crazy and it'll pop off. But since this is a top cutting, it will grow much quicker than if you're to make just a wet stick. So what is a wet stick? So basically it's just a stem and a stem, no leaves, no whatsoever, but only a single root node. So if you're going to grow this as a wet stick, it will take a much longer time to actually get yourself a plant. But if you're patient, go for it. I would highly recommend it. But if you are not patient like me, I would recommend just cutting the top off like this and just wait for your plant to branch out, and you're gonna get more plants pretty much every single time. So yeah, now what I'm going to talk about is, of course, the pots. So types of pots that you need for this plant is actually well draining. So what you want to do is, of course, every single pot that you owned for these houseplants, I recommend having a drainage hole so that way the excess water could just flow out and you don't really need to risk on having root rot and having water congested in the soil and it's just soggy and it just kills the plant. So yeah. Alright, so I thank you guys all for joining this video and watching this video on how to care and how to grow and how to propagate this Rhaphidiphora Tetrasperma. So yeah, if you like this video, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe down below. And yeah, I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.